Hello everyone there today. It's me, Papa Hector here. And if you like this video and you like my channel, please click subscribe and click like below. And today's video, what I'm doing is on differences in the 21 divisions and in Sanse. So recently I did a video about how lineages are very important in these traditions. And to further delve into that, I want to speak about differences. So in the spiritual community, there's always a war going on about who's right and who's wrong, who does things the right way and who does things the wrong way, and who is this and who is that, and which way is this and which way is that. And the fact is that, especially within 21 divisions and the Sanse work and our traditions, there our practices vary very greatly from region to region to region to region. So practices vary very greatly between regions, right? And what I like to often say to people is that what our traditions actually have, they provide more of like an outline and a structure, a certain boundary line, certain tradition. But within those lines, within that structure, there's plenty of space and plenty of room for differences and for things to be worked out differently in various places. We as spiritual workers are supposed to be really open-minded and have cleared ourselves of being judgmental and having tons of judgment. It's one of the things that makes us spiritual workers. And when spiritual workers go to war with other spiritual workers, or people in these traditions go to war with other people in these traditions, it doesn't look good for our traditions as a whole. And there's many differences in the way that things are practiced throughout the island. And in our cases, in the cases of lines like the 21 divisions and Sanse, where the Cha-Cha lineage is prevalent, there's less of a uniformity of practices across the board than in many other Caribbean traditions. Okay? So, just to give 21 divisions, for example. In 21 divisions, some people practice animal sacrifice. Other people do not practice animal sacrifice. For example, I'm friends with some servidores de misterio and some caballos de misterio that where they come from, they don't sacrifice animals at all to the spirits. And they consider spirits desiring of blood or wanting sacrifice to be negative in nature. Whereas there's many other places where they do sacrifice animals to the mysteries and to the spirits. Another example is the drums. Okay? There are certain regions and certain areas in which they don't drum for the spirits. They don't do fiestas teatrables, fiesta de palo, etc., etc. They don't do those types of feasts. They don't do those types of parties. They don't hold drummings, right? In those places, they hold veladas, like they hold candle vigils, candle ceremonies. They hold horas santas, prayer ceremonies, misas, acción de gracia, those types of rituals that are more prayer-oriented and less dance-oriented. There's places within the DR where they don't practice dance. Dance is not a heavy part of the tradition in the way that they work with the Laseo de Misterio. So there's various regional differences. And what is the right practice? The right practice is ultimately the practice that works. And all of these practices work for different individuals within those lineages. So the truth is that all the various practices work in various different ways. And each kind of lineage or region has its system that works together in a perfect puzzle that makes it work perfectly for them. This is why it's important to have a lineage, because otherwise you're going to end up really severely confused. Okay? Because what's right in one lineage might not be right in another lineage. There's areas that I've traveled to in DR where Mama Bullita, which is part of my lineage, that is important, okay, as wife of Baron, doesn't exist. Okay, in those areas, the wife of Baron is considered to be Santa Marta, Saint Martha, Lubana, okay? And that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it different. Does it work for those individuals? Yes, it does. So there's various differences in the way these things are practiced. Now, what can we say then that holds things together, and what is the traditions that hold things together? There's certain things that just do not change. And that's what we can go ahead and say, look, that's not right. Yes, this is right. This and this and that. Okay? There are certain things that just do not change. We're not going to suddenly start seeing Metrezili wearing all black and, smoking cigars. It's because the energy, the force of that spirit, those things do not align itself. It doesn't work with that vibration. It doesn't work with that current. It doesn't work with that corriente of force. And so in those cases, we can say, yeah, that's not right. That doesn't work. But there's many other cases where that can't really be said because there's various variations in practices. And in Haiti, they say Shakungan Shakaili, meaning every Hungan has his or her temple, aka his or her house, meaning what he does in his house is good for him, and what I do in my house is good for me. I don't criticize what he does in his house, and he don't worry about what I do in my house. And I very much believe in that mentality. I'm very much of the belief of spiritual support, meaning supporting all those spiritual workers, supporting my fellow spiritual workers, brothers and sisters, whether or not I agree with everything that they're doing or not. I'm not here to compete. I don't really care. And personally, I don't really care what you're doing in your own house or your own home. That's your problem, not mine. My purpose here is to help people understand our traditions, clarify myths, break through falsities, and help people who are meant to find this path through me, find this path through me. I don't really care what everyone does. But the loi, the mystery, comes and works with their caballo, their person, or their servidor differently. With each individual, that loi works, or that mystery works with that individual on an individual relationship basis. And that can't be determined by the masses or society at large. That's the way that loi unravels or se desenvolve. Okay? He unravels himself with that horse. And I've seen, throughout the many years, I've seen all types of variations in how people do spiritual work in the DR, and as well as in Puerto Rico. Same thing with terminology and words, okay? In some places, the word brujo or witch is not considered such a good thing. In other places, curandero or curandera is the preferred word. In other places, espiritista is the preferred word, including in the DR. They're sometimes referred to themselves as a Dominican espiritista, okay? Because it's various ways of the same thing. And especially in the traditions of the DR and the 21 divisions, what we find is that there's almost seems to be like two major offsets or offlines through which it travels. And what we refer to that, or I refer to that, right, is Santeria Dominicana versus Voodoo Dominicano. So, what do I mean by this? In this case, we're not using the word Santeria to reflect the Lucumi traditions in Ifa and Santeria in the Cuban sense. In many of the other Caribbean countries, the word Santeria was used to mean basically anyone who worked with saints and who worked with the spirits as saints and who did this type of spiritual work. Okay? Santeria is following of the saints. So those who practice the 21 divisions in a more Santeria Dominicana fashion, a more saint-oriented Catholicized manner, okay, often practice things a lot more Catholicized in essence. Less drummings, less sense of big ritual offerings. It's more, the tradition is more Catholicized. It's very common for them to do lots of misas and in the Catholic Church, as well as horas santas, veladas, and things of that nature. Those who practice a more voodoo style, more congruent with the African root of things, is what I would refer to as Voodoo Dominicano, Dominican Voodoo, which is more Africanized in nature. Both of the manners in which the tradition has unraveled work. And they work for many thousands and millions of people. Right? And so in this line, there's more of an Afrocentric way of serving the spirits and working with the spirits. The emphasis of the drum is more heavy. The emphasis of knowing the mystery and the mystery's names and the mystery's history is more heavy. Okay? The work includes more African-oriented work. It's not uncommon, for example, the bebe, which is a symbol of the spirits, right? Not to be used in the more Catholicized version of Dominican Voodoo, but to be very much used in the other Africanized version of Dominican Voodoo. Okay? So, just for anyone who's not from the background, it can be really, really confusing because you see many different practices and everyone's kind of like, well, our way is right, that way is not right, dot, 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 dot. And in reality, there's many, many different ways. There's many ways to get to the divine. As I always teach my students and as I always tell people, there's many pathways to God. It's one God, many, many paths. And as spiritual workers, spiritual people, we need to keep ourselves very much open and open-minded, free of judgment. Ultimately, because these things are mysteries, and they're referred to as mysteries for a reason. So, for anybody wondering about right and wrong, etc., there you go. I hope that this has helped you. One last note I want to make before I leave this discussion is this includes spirits that, like I mentioned before, some spirits are very much regional. And in one region you find them, and in another region they don't exist. Okay? So, just because in another region that spirit doesn't exist doesn't mean that the spiritual worker doesn't know what they're doing. This is why someone, especially when you are not from these backgrounds and these cultures, it's very important to find a lineage, tie yourself into that lineage, and really become a part of that lineage and focus on learning your lineage, not all the types of nonsense that are out and about. So until next time, God bless you. Keep the faith. It's Papa Hector.